Ele pamoja.
Thirty-three minutes past the hour. You're watching your favorite morning show, Morning Express, on our third hour of coverage this morning. Remember, it is the 9th of May, and all eyes this morning will be on Parliament as it reconvenes to discuss the rising cost of living in the country. But even as Parliament does that, let's just take you through the cost of living as is, especially from the increase we've seen from the year 2013 to the current 2017. And as we speak, of course, just taking a look at the current cost of living in the country, and the cost of food in Kenya has increased 20.98% in April of 2017, that is last month, over the same period, same month in the previous year. So between 2016 and 2017, the cost of living has risen by 20.98%. And food inflation in Kenya is now averaged at 11.07% from 2010 up until 2017. And this is the highest recorded percentage of inflation in the country. And of course, this is what is being blamed for the rising cost of living. And so food inflation in Kenya, there we have it, 11.07%. That is reaching an all-time high of 26.20% in October 2011, with a record low of 1.44% in October of 2012. So a lot of fluctuations over the past 5 years or so. And the inflation rate as of April 2017, this was last month, was 11.48%. This is according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And of course, this is as a result of the increase of basic food items in the country. Among them, an increase in sukuma wiki, spinach, maize flour, the likes of milk, potatoes, cabbages, onions, as well as maize grain. Many of the prices of these basic commodities have risen, accounting for the high number of inflation that we have seen. And the increase in prices of these particular items, of course, is partly contributed by the prevailing drought conditions. We have the current armyworm invasion in the country. And so this has really contributed to the rising number of inflation. As we speak, inflation has hit a 4-year high at 11.48%. All right, so let's take a look at what else we have. So commodity prices now have also been rising year on year. Let's take a look at the year 2016 and the prices of basic commodities. Then a kilo of cabbage last year went for 55 shillings, and a kilo of 2 kg sugar was at 224 shillings. So of course, inflation had already started making rounds, and the prices of basic commodities had already started rising. That is the year 2016. A 2 kg packet of maize flour was retailing at 103 shillings. That is the year May 2016. Let's also take a look at the cost of a half-liter packet of milk. In 2016, they're retailing at 53 shillings. The prices of LPG gas, they're retailing at 2,268 shillings. And that is for the 13 kilogram LPG gas. And then, of course, potatoes retailing at 77 shillings per kilo for the year 2016. So let's take a look now at the prices in 2017 and just comparing how the year-on-year inflation has been so far. So in May 2017, which is where we are now, a kilo of cabbage now going for 75 shillings. Now remember, this is a 20 shilling increase from the year 2016 because it was at 55%. A 2 kg packet of sugar is now retailing between 300 and 350 shillings, an increase of about 70 to 80 shillings depending on the brand of milk, on the brand of sugar that you are buying rather, and that's a very significant increase as well. a 2 kg packet of maize flour, which has been causing uproar among Kenyans, currently retailing between 160 to 180 shillings, again, depending on the brand that you will be buying. Remember, in 2016, this same 2 kg packet of maize flour was retailing at 103 shillings. So we're seeing an increase here of about 77 shillings thereabout. This is just over the period of 1 year. Let's take a look at the price of a half-litre packet of milk right now, retailing at between 49 to 65 shillings, depending on the brand. In 2016, same period last year, a half packet of milk was retailing at 53 shillings. So again, a very an increase there to 65 shillings, an increase of about 10 to 12 shillings thereabout. And then talking about cooking gas, 13 kg LPG gas, and now retailing at that there was a typo there, retailing at 1,139 shillings for the 6 kg LPG gas. We haven't put the prices there, and that is an increase, of course. For the 13 kg price of gas there, retailing at about 2,500 shillings, an increase of about 268 shillings. And of course, we have also the prices of cabbage. Well, this is a difference in prices really between 2016 and 2017. Prices of cabbage increasing by 20 shillings. The price of a 2 kg packet of sugar increasing by 76 shillings. The price of a 2 kg packet of maize flour also increasing at 77 shillings. We've also seen other increases in terms of milk, which has seen an increase of 12 shillings since last year. And potatoes have seen another increase there of about 62 shillings and 268 shillings increase for a 13 kg LPG gas. So that is the current cost of living in the country. Many Kenyans complaining that it is just too high and they cannot continue to dig any deeper into their pockets. Will Parliament today be able to alleviate the rising cost of living? That is our question of the day. Do interact with us on Twitter under the hashtag Morning Express KTN, even as my colleague Michael Gitonga continues with this conversation with Professor Oeritumbo.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle, for that great breakdown there, showing us just basically, if you went to the supermarket today, how much more would you be paying for that extra, well, not extra, but for the same amount of milk, for the same amount of flour, how much would you be paying? And it's broken down very well there. And joining me in the studio now to have that conversation is Professor Oeritumbo, who is a political analyst. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with that question posed out by Michelle there, which is our question of the day. Can Parliament do anything about this?
Thank you, Michael. Interestingly, that is a classic example of a knee-jerk reaction. All along, the government, Parliament, and all institutions that are involved have been aware that there has been drought.
This is happening.
It's happening. But none of them has initiated activities that would ameliorate the challenges for the ordinary citizen. So what Parliament is going to do is like putting a piece of plaster on a wound, that pus is coming out and the stench is there. Secondly, whatever Parliament passes is going to depend on producers and middlemen. Now, these people are known traditionally not to respond rapidly to political decisions. They are going to be responding to the past. They are going to be responding to the cash box. So even if Parliament does what it proposes to do today or tomorrow, there is going to be a lag period between the decision and the implementation. In other words, if the guys have been buying and selling, let's say at an item at 200 shillings, they're not going to change it overnight. They're going to have to...
There's, of course, a procedure that would have to be followed.
Yes.
But even as we wait for that procedure, what is it that Parliament can do? Especially, I mean, this is, many Kenyans would say it's too little, too late. Because if it is Jubilee, for example, they've been in power for the last 4 years. We are just now getting to the sunset of their term. And now they have a magic solution for the prices which have been going up?
I dare say that there is no magic solution. There is no magic bullet for this particular problem. They will simply have, they will make a political decision, then they'll have to sit down and try to accelerate the procedures that will enable the citizen to partially enjoy a reduction. But to me, this particular act is an example of political mismanagement of national challenges. For example, quite clearly, the drought has been on for
a while.
Now, the president and his team should have mobilized a team at the very beginning. You could see that there was going to be a shortage of basic commodities.
Right.
And we're having a problem now where too much money chasing too few goods. And as a result, you can quite see that this response is due to political fear. The ruling coalition finds itself on the back foot on something that touches every citizen. So in practical terms, in my view, without appearing to be reckless, the position is it's a reflection of inconsistency, political inconsistency in handling national issues. There is too much emphasis placed on purely political activities, political processes, and a lot of excitement. But really the technical issues that allow you to solve problems, the essence of having technocrats in ministries and departments
is to plan.
And then to provide solutions, problem solving. But everybody is political.
That being said, because this is something that really should not be politicized, it is an issue of national concern, but it has been politicized. Parliament is meeting today, and so far the kind of politics we've seen is opposition pointing fingers and using the rising cost of living as a campaign mechanism really to rally people to vote out the Jubilee administration. So what is there really political will in Parliament today, especially among opposition members of Parliament, to bring a solution to this crisis under the regime of the Jubilee administration? Are we likely to see that politics at play, a lot of sabotage perhaps?
Whether the opposition likes it or not, the government has got numbers to get approvals. They'll get approval if they want to. Now, but it would be nice to persuade them that let us be bipartisan in this, so that we can be able to solve a challenging national problem that affects both sides of the political coin. In other words, whether you are in the opposition or in government, you are hit by the inflation, by the soaring cost of items. My personal appeal would have been they should join together to ameliorate the challenges of this particular problem. Whether, and really if you look at it, if they take this matter purely at the political level, political party loyalty is going to play a role, the thing is going to be passed anyway. Now, once it is passed, if the opposition continues to sing the same song, the implementation
it's going to take a while. Now, politicians are well known for building people's hope. And more often than not, it is false hope. And of course, this may be another situation whereby the government has said, and the president himself said that they're going to make sure that they do something about it. But practically speaking, how long, because Mwananchi wants to walk into a supermarket and instead of paying 180 shillings for 2 kilograms of flour, is pay 100 shillings or 80 or even less. That's what they want to see reflected. How long do you think this would take from the time now Parliament convenes today, they sit down and assuming all factors remaining constant and they agree to the prices actually coming down?
I am not an expert in the dynamics of this, but realistically, I can't see any impact within the next 30 days. I can't see an impact. The reason being, after they have passed it in Parliament, I suspect the government is going to get some ad hoc measures to persuade certain sections of the industry to begin immediately implementing as a demonstration of goodwill. But the mechanics of it are going to take, I would say, very, very close to the election. And to me, it is something that the Jubilee government must have a rapid response team that deals with any time that there is an improvement, build on it. Any time there is an improvement, build on it. Because you can see quite clearly the opposition is determined to play on this continuously, and they're entitled. So in real terms, is a tough assignment.
All right, you've mentioned, and rightly so, that this is part of lack of planning. They say failing to plan is planning to fail. Do you hear from the political class anything that speaks to a plan, whether from the government or from the opposition? Or are we just rapid responding and knee-jerk reaction? Then after that, once August 8th comes, we go to the polls, everybody goes back to their cocoons, and that story ends. Do you hear a voice of planning, whether from government or from the opposition currently?
Now, yes, there is a voice of planning, but there is a challenge that frustrates that planning. When our people get into politics, there are too many vested interest groups. So once a plan is prepared and is translated into activities, what seems to happen is that the various cartels and interest groups hold different units of the plan hostage. So the implementation gradually becomes political liability. And the people will say, now, if you touch that one, I'm going to be injured. If you touch this one, I'm going to be injured. So what basically has happened is that plans are there, and they will always be there. The transfer or the movement from the plan, all right, to to results, that's where the catch is. Because of the fact that our political system is hostage to economic interests. And the economic interests are more diverse, in fact, than political interests. So one of the greatest challenges of our political establishment is that it is held hostage to what I call petty economic interests.
Okay, and at that point, let me bring in a member of parliament, and this is a nominated member of parliament, Johnston Sakaja, who joins us from our I&M studios. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, sir, this morning. And of course, Kenyans are currently burdened by the food prices and the cost of living. The president is on record saying that once parliament convenes today, they're going to address that. Johnston Sakaja, from you, what is it that we should expect?
First of all, thank you, Mike, and everyone in studio. I'd like to say first that it's an unfortunate situation. I agree with Professor that this is not something that could not have been, foreseen, or something that could not have been planned. And indeed, the reason why Parliament is discussing this is because Parliament has the mandate to deliberate on all matters of interest to the people of Kenya. And what we would like to hear is what government has been doing over this time. I am aware that as far back as 5 months ago, there have been meetings with millers and several other initiatives to bring down the prices. So we'd want to know why haven't those initiatives led to a drop in the prices at the till. I know the strategy all along has been to subsidize production, and that is at the farmers' level, whether it is the fertilizers, etc. But how can we now subsidize consumption? And we'd like to know why haven't these initiatives the government has been putting in place led to, translated to the common mwananchi? Is it the millers? Is it cartels? What is it that is going on? Secondly, Parliament again has the role to appropriate. Parliament sets taxes. Parliament passes the budget. And of course, we'll be looking at what other measures can be done, especially when it comes to importing low-cost grain because of the shortage, doing the waivers of taxes, so that in the shortest time possible, these prices can go down. So I don't think there's a problem. I've listened to professors saying that it might be a knee-jerk reaction. Parliament's work is not really to manage or implement the economy, but Parliament must deliberate on behalf of the people, and that is why Parliament is coming in now to see what has been going on. I would not like to agree with the notion that government has been doing nothing. Possibly government has not communicated well enough what it has been doing all this time, and that is what we want to hear from them.
All right, Sakaja, financial experts would say that this is beyond the use of a supplementary budget, really, and that the bigger problem ailing Kenya is as a result of a host of macroeconomic policies over the decades that have resulted into such a situation. So in terms of looking at these policies, maybe just to point out one or two that need to be remedied in terms of long-term solutions.
That is true. If you look at the February 2017 report of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, they highlighted, I think, around 10 countries that indeed would be affected by this. So it is true, it is beyond Kenya, it is a global issue. Of course, in terms of policy issues, we want to hear from our Department of Agriculture and even the Committee of Agriculture, what have they done so far to make sure that we move as a country from heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture. We know we've had some plans, and there was a gentleman earlier in studio who I think was the expert. I was listening in as well, who talked about all these initiatives, whether it is from Galana, whether it is the issues of the dams, etc., that we can move away from heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture. If you look at countries like Egypt or Israel that have much more that are much more arid than we are, you don't get them having this issue because they're used to it. We've had too much reliance on that. I think beyond that, it is how government again is able to cushion the most vulnerable from the vagaries of economic play by millers, etc. And a case in point is the fact that subsidized crop was given to millers. And why hasn't that translated? We're a free market economy, fortunately or unfortunately, and really you cannot force a specific price on millers, So that is another, economic policy issue that must be looked at, that even when you subsidize them, how do you then tie them probably by contract to ensure that if we subsidize to this extent, then the price goes down to this extent. But I think what must be looked at really at this point is in the short to medium term what must be done, because Kenyans are actually really suffering. We interact with them, and we have seen the level of desperation that is going on. So at this point, what measure can be put in place to plug it, even as we solidify the medium to long term interventions?
All right, and at this point in time, we want to say goodbye to our home channel. Those of us on KTN Home, Life and Style is just about to begin, but on KTN News, we continue with this discussion. And just a quick reminder of who we have with us in studio. We have Professor Oeri Tumbo, who's a political analyst. We also have Johnston Sakaja, who's a member of nominated member of parliament. And well, the discussion is looking at the soaring food prices. You're welcome to participate. All right, and coming back to you, Sakaja, and you've mentioned, and Prof had alluded to the fact that this is a knee-jerk reaction, but you've mentioned that there has been a plan. For the last 5 months, the government did take a plan to avert some of this crisis, but it seems not to have translated to the till. So, Sakaja, what is it that is going to be different? What is Parliament going to do that is different that did not happen the 5 months ago?
I think Parliament, first of all, and we must be clear about the role of Parliament. Parliament is not an implementing institution. Parliament is an oversight institution. And in that role of oversight, Parliament then must look at what are the gaps. Why isn't government interventions or initiatives being translated to the till? And we want to see where the gap is, whether it is from the producers, or the government itself, or the millers, whether the tax measures, if you remember the discussion during the budget of the finance bill, of the waiver of those taxes, why has it taken too long to translate to the people? So Parliament is doing this purely as representatives of the people. I think it is important for even the media and for the rest of us to now also listen to what government has been doing, and we hope that media will be able to cover Parliament as we interrogate the Minister of Agriculture, the Treasury, and all these other departments. But what I know is that about 4 or 5 months ago, when these interventions were put in place, there was an agreement with the millers that would translate. And we've had a lot of these unscrupulous business practices where you have hoarding. Some of these commodities are kept so that they say, okay, your intervention affects stock from this date, so the stock that has been there earlier is not affected, etc. But at certain times when we're talking about lives of Kenyans, I don't think it is fair or right for us either to play politics or for people to purely put their profit ahead of the lives of other Kenyans. So Parliament is not necessarily, it's not an implementing institution. Parliament is an oversight institution, and Parliament then is playing its role in oversight and also in appropriation to make sure that the tax measures put in place are implemented, and to also question all the relevant departments that are mandated by the people of Kenya to ensure that we protect our people. And we had the president really pushing on that as well.
And Professor Oeri, you've had Sakaja speak. Are you in agreement that that is the way to go?
Actually, I would like to thank him for making that particular contribution. although I find a problem, all along, since the government began taking action to ameliorate this particular challenge, the relevant ministry has not been explaining to the citizen what they have been doing. The government has not been reporting its efforts. Now we are in a crisis. They are saying they have been doing it with rather unsuccessfully. So one of the challenges that is quite obvious now is that the government has not been actively informing the public about the various efforts that have been made to deal with this thing before it becomes a crisis. Now, it is true that Parliament is not an implementing agency. That's pretty obvious. It basically gives general guidelines for the government to implement its agenda. Now, there is clearly a gap between what Parliament recommended last time, what the Jubilee Manifesto said, and what the citizens require. So this disconnect is what is normally described as political ineffectiveness. If I was harsh, I would say incompetence. Now, if you look very carefully, Mr. Sakaja has taken a somewhat defensive approach, whereby he wants to eat his cake and have it. He's saying we must protect the citizens. But all along, you have had a chance to initiate measures to protect them, and nothing was done. The way forward in this particular thing is when they go to Parliament, the government should explain to Parliament clearly the specific measures it has taken and what factors prevented these measures from being successful and how we drifted slowly into a crisis. That is one thing that needs to be done. For example, when the State House spokesman makes those statements...
Maybe let me pause you there, because I'd like Sakaja to respond, first of all, to something that you've brought up here. And I'd like to hear from you, Sakaja. Would you admit that there has been a failure on the part of government? Yes, they were supposed to have protected and cushioned Mwananchi, but that has not happened. And that is evidenced by the prices that we have on the till right now.
I think, as I've said earlier, and I hope Professor was listening, the measures put in place by Parliament already have been done. It's not Parliament is not meeting now to introduce new measures. Parliament puts in measures through the Appropriation Act when we discuss the budget, and through the reduction of those taxes that I had mentioned earlier. We want to understand why this has not yet trickled down. Secondly, it is important for us also as a house, because the house operates both as plenary and as its departments. And we know the Department of Agriculture has been interacting with this issue and has been doing oversight. We want Kenyans to hear and for us to know, because all of these interventions, and Professor, you know, for you to be a professor, you're someone who believes in time. It is not instant. And you know, there's no intervention that can be made even today that is instant. We want to know why it has taken so long. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, based on that FAO report of the UN in February 2017, it's a global issue. We also want to see what is best practice that has been done in those other countries that have faced this issue. It is true, and there I admit, of course, I'm not a spokesman of government, I'm a member of Parliament, but I do agree that Parliament, or rather government, could have done much better in terms of communicating and letting Kenyans know what is being done all this time, what is the state of the strategic reserve, and all these other measures. Yes, that could have been done better, I agree. But where we are today, you know, we must, instead of saying, okay, it is a knee-jerk reaction, let us do nothing, let us see what is the best thing to do at this point. Yes, we are waiting for the low-cost grain to come in, but before it comes in, the stocks that are available today in the country, especially the millers, why don't we subsidize those, you know, at the till, you know? How do you deal with the unscrupulous businessmen then who come in between these interventions and the people of Kenya and the Mwananchi? So I don't think all is lost. I think Parliament must play that role proactively, of course. We must not wait for a crisis. But beyond that, we are asking the relevant departments what they have been doing. We know what we have done as an institution. We know the measures that have been put in place. We know the discussions that have been going on, actually, I think even overnight, for many days and many days with the millers, between Treasury and the millers. Why is it not trickling down? Is there something we want them to tell us that the reason it has not trickled down is that there is this and this gap within the law? There is this gap that you can sort out in Parliament, because Parliament is the only legislative body in this country, you know, and anybody else who exercises that mandate is a delegated jurisdiction. So we want to understand then what else can we do at this time to ameliorate the situation. Of course, there's always been a disconnect between different institutions sorry?
Sorry, yes, I think there may have been a communication problem there, but Professor, you wanted to respond to that. You wanted to say something? As we wind up,
yes.
I need it to be brief.
Yes, in fact, part of the problem is that the same people who are debating those things in Parliament and are allocating money to help to solve the problem are the same people who are also connected with the dealers and millers and transporters and warehousing people. So as a result, the dynamics of this thing outside Parliament is rather complicated because of the fact that when the government is trying to solve the problem, the civil servants in particular, the political dynamics are so intertwined with economic dynamics that unless certain political interests are requested in the national interest, all right, to control their appetite, this thing is going to take a long time.
Professor, I think it would be fair. I think it would be fair to be specific and clear on what those interests are. You know, it is very easy to point a finger at political interest and economic interest and individuals involved. I mean, if you have either facts or individuals, I think we need to know, because Kenyans are suffering, and it's very easy to get away with just generalizing a problem and saying that there are these political considerations. Let us be clear about what these considerations are, so that we can deal with them. Because it will be very unfortunate if there is any member of Parliament trying to benefit individually at the expense of Kenyans, and we want to know who those are.
All right. Your closing comments, Prof.
My closing comments are very simple. While it's interesting to say, give us specific names, you know what that means. It's not that they are not known. Even Sakaja knows them. It's just politically is a bad risk. But
you see, Prof, for the sake of Kenyans and the sake of, now that we are on national television, if we say that there are people who are, or if we are alluding to the fact that there are cartels, then we might as well name those cartels, because they need to be dealt with. If we don't have them, then let's leave the organs that would deal with that to do that. And where the rubber meets the road,
Sakaja. When you make such fleeting comments,
yeah, go on.
You know, I mean, it's not fair to make such fleeting comments without any facts. It's important to substantiate or to withdraw.
All right, Sakaja, as we wind up, where the rubber meets the road is at the till. When Kenyans go to the till and pay for their commodities, that's where they want to know that prices are coming down. What promise are you making to Kenyans this morning?
No, the promise that I can make, based on the power that I have as a member of Parliament, is that this matter is being taken extremely seriously by legislators, and that we will not stop at anything to make sure that we have done our best for the price to go down at the till, no matter who is involved. And that is why I'm asking Prof to just come out clean. No matter who is involved at an individual level, no matter which institution might be the one pulling us behind, what the factors are, we want to make sure that the ordinary Kenyan can be able to afford a meal, that the prices come down to manageable levels. And I give my personal commitment and promise that I'll be there all through the sessions to make sure that that happens.
Do you agree and admit that there has been a failure on government to do this so far? If they're going to be able to bring them down after the session this time, why didn't it happen before?
We would like to hear all the facts and what the product of the interventions before have been, before saying that this is the person at fault. You might find it's a clearing and forwarding issue. You might find it is a problem of the millers who have been given X amount of money, or who have not translated it. So we want to know exactly where it is. But to say there's been inaction will not be true, because we all know there's been action. You yourself reported on the budget speech. You reported on what the president has been saying before, especially even with the tax measures, the finance bill, etc. The interventions have been there. We want to know where the gap, where the weak link in the chain has been, because Kenyans are suffering because of that.
All right, thank you very much, Johnston Sakaja, who is a nominated member of parliament, who was joining us from our INM studio in the CBD, and also Professor Oyeri Tumbo, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us this morning. And that's the political point. We're going to take a short break right here on Morning Express, but do stay with us. We've got more stories that are making headlines coming up right here on Morning Express.